Hello, Internet, and welcome to Ramblings of a Madman. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Sean and Stuart for a shallow and probably uninformed dive into unexplained mysteries, conspiracy theories, and the supernatural. Hello, welcome back. We're here.
Hello.
Hi.
Once again.
How are we all doing?
Yeah, good.
Very well, thank you.
As a rehash for last week, week 357?
Week 43 or whatever.
That was a lot. There's been a lot of weeks. Well, anyway, today I brought a topic which I've been wanting to do for quite a while. It's kind of cool, I think. And It's called the Tamam Shud case. So that's TAMAMSHUD. Have you heard of this?
No.
I have, but every time I think of it, I think I mix different theories together, so it's still going to be relatively new to me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm excited about it as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll be one of these topics that turns out to be something that you do know a little bit about or you've heard before, but you don't recognise that name.
It's pretty famous.
Yeah. A bit like how the whole Event Horizon thing from Boaty McBoatface episode.
We've done a lot of boat episodes, haven't we? Ships are just mysterious.
Ships are mysterious.
So this is one of Australia's most profound mysteries. We're in the continent of Australia.
Okay.
It does. For the case of this mystery, let's assume that Australia exists.
Okay. Jump ahead to the Flat Earth episode.
Oh no, you've done it now. Alex is going to kill you.
Continue.
This is the Tamam Shud case, and it's also known as the mystery of the Somerton Man.
Huh.
So it's the 1st of December 1948 at 6:30 a.m, and the police are notified of a deceased man found on Somerton Park Beach in Adelaide, South Australia. The man was found lying in the sand with his head and shoulders propped up against a seawall. His legs were extended towards the sea and his feet were crossed. The man was in his early 40s and he was in top physical condition, based on the time really. So we're talking 5'11", clean shaven, broad shoulders, and hands that showed no signs of manual labour, that sort of person.
Okay.
He was neatly dressed in a brown suit with polished brown shoes. He had an unsmoked cigarette tucked behind his ear and another partially smoked cigarette tucked between his cheek and his coat's collar. So kind of like what you do with a phone if you didn't have any hands.
Yeah.
This is interesting. All of the labels from his clothes have been removed, and also he lacked a hat, which was unusual for a man in 1948 and in Australia as well.
His labels have been removed.
Yeah.
All the labels from his clothes have been removed.
The fact that has been pointed out, I'm presuming will be relevant, but it could be a superstition. It could be anything.
It's important. We'll get to it.
Right. Okay. I'll leave my theory for later then.
So there are some witnesses. These are reports from the night before the body was found. At 7 p.m, John Lyons and his wife passed around 15 metres away from the man who was slumped against the seawall. They reported that they had seen the man raise his arm upwards before dropping it back to the ground.
What, like he was waving?
Yeah, or he was stretching, or he was spasming. I don't know. The point is that they think he was alive at this point, at 7 p.m. And then a bit later, between 7:30 and 8, a couple were sat on a bench just south of the man. Their positioning meant that they could only see his legs, so they were above him a little bit and to the side. They reported that they hadn't seen him move whilst they were there. However, they did have the impression that his position had changed. That's a bit of an ambiguous statement, but it's a bit of an ambiguous witness, I guess. By the way, the source for this episode is a blog that some guys made, which is amazing, called somerandomstuff1.wordpress.com. I'll link it in the description, and we're kind of just going to go along the blog.
Okay.
Yeah, so this isn't. It's going to be the source of most of your information, but it's not the source.
It's not the source. I've watched a few videos, and I took a bit from Wikipedia and stuff like that.
So he's just collated all the stuff together.
Yeah. So let's talk about the autopsy. So there were some strange abnormalities discovered when the man's body was analysed. The pathologist noted that the man had very pronounced calf muscles and wedge-shaped toes, and hypothesised that he may have been a ballet dancer.
Okay.
Okay.
calf muscles can become pronounced due to repetitively raising and lowering your toes, which is a common move in ballet. And also, pointed ballet shoes would contribute to a person having wedge-shaped feet.
Fair point.
He also had some rare genetic abnormalities, and these were investigated later, much later in 2010, so about 10 years ago. His upper ear hollow is larger than his lower ear hollow, and this is a characteristic present in 1 to 2% of Caucasians. And I'll pause as everyone looks at their ear in the mirror to check they have this.
Say it again with the ear hollow. Can you explain that a bit more?
So the upper ear hollow is larger than his lower ear hollow, and it's normally the other way round. If you're Caucasian,
is there a picture for that? Because I'm trying to work out.
I don't think there is.
Right. Okay.
By the way, mine are about the same size, so I don't have that. I'm not special.
When you say the upper ear hollow, are you on about like just underneath the very top of the ear?
No, I think he means, you know where your ear canal is?
Yes.
There's a ditch, and there's a ditch below it, straight after it comes out of your ear canal.
Yeah.
Where the rest of your earbud rests if you put a headphone in.
Yeah.
An earbud. And then the bit at the top as well.
Okay.
Get it?
Yeah.
Also, he had a trait known as hypodontia, and this means he was missing his 2 upper lateral incisors, and as a result, his canine teeth were directly next to his front middle teeth.
Oh.
So that's kind of weird.
Directly next to his front middle. Oh.
Yeah. So he was like missing the little teeth between his canines and his middle teeth.
Oh. So he only had 4 incisors.
Yeah, I think so.
2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. Oh.
In terms of internal issues, the man showed severe congestion of multiple organs. He had blood mixed with food in his stomach. His spleen was 3 times its normal size, and he had liver damage.
He's a boozer.
The pathologist suggested poisoning. However, such a substance would be unlikely to cause a spleen enlargement, so it's plausible that the man was already of ill health.
Yeah, that fits.
Does that sound
so
right to you?
the spleen being
Yeah.
full is alcohol?
Well, I mean, obviously, it may tell her. Alex might be about to tell us, but often people with liver problems get blood flow problems as well, and you get essentially, from a plumbing point of view, you get back pressure. So if you get an enlarged liver, you can get an enlarged spleen as well, and that would fit with him having an enlarged spleen, a weird-looking liver, and if there was blood in his stomach, it might be associated something called avarice, which is basically fragile blood vessels that happen when you have liver disease, and they can rupture and people can die literally instantly from them. So that kind of fits from a medical point of view.
Why did you have to flex so hard, though? We asked about alcohol poisoning.
It sounds like somebody who's abused alcohol. They're all the but having said that, it also could be somebody with a liver problem. If he's got other genetic problems, it may well be that he's got a fundamental liver problem rather than him being a boozer, to be fair.
Is any of that, I'm just trying to think of ideas in my head, is any of that similar to drowning? I presume that it would obviously be salt or water, and salt or salt water.
Well, that'd be water in the stomach and lungs if you drowned, right?
Should be water in your lungs,
Yeah.
Because you should inhale water when you drown.
Because to me, obviously, he was propped up, so it sounds like he was comfortable. He had a unsmoked cigarette and stuff like that. So there's no way
he also wasn't wet.
Right. Okay.
His clothes were dry and they were like nicely pressed, and his shoes were shiny and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Because I was going to say, like, if
he wasn't covered in seaweed.
No.
Even if he had come from the sea, then you could have dried him out in the Australian sun. But the clean press thing and the shoes being shiny, everything like that.
Yeah, you'd expect like salt residue, wouldn't you, if he dried out?
I think I'm completely accepting it's nothing to do with the sea.
He's not the Little Mermaid who's come out to crawled onto the beach.
No. I don't know where to go from that. I'll just continue with my notes.
Yeah.
So anyway, no poison was detected in the autopsy. However, during the inquest, a professor of pharmacology and physiology suggested that 2 publicly available drugs, digitalis and obane, I think it's pronounced, could kill someone if taken in a certain dose, and they would not be detectable in an autopsy at the time. So their assumption is this man's been poisoned, and that the organs are from previous illness or alcoholism or whatever. Let's talk about his belongings. On this person, the man had a bus ticket to Glenelg North, which is a few minutes north of Somerton Beach. He had an unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach. So Adelaide's the nearest city, and Henley Beach is sort of like west of that, up the coast.
Okay.
He had 2 combs, one being a US manufactured aluminum comb. I'll do that again because I'm not American. He had
Aluminum.
Aluminum.
I've listened to way too many American
I wasn't going to
podcasts.
question you. I wasn't
I
going to
didn't even notice.
He had 2 combs, one being a US manufactured aluminium comb. He had a half-empty pack of juicy fruit chewing gum, a Army Club cigarette packet which contained 7 cigarettes of a different brand. So Army Club was an old British cigarette make.
Oh, okay. So he's not military himself.
No, he's not military. He had a quarter-full box of matches. He had no wallet, money, or ID on him. So they have no way to tell who this guy is.
So no labels in his clothes, no ID, and no wallet.
Before you go on, this was well documented, right? The finding of the body
very well.
and stuff. Okay. It's not just like, oh, there's an eyewitness of a boat disappearing.
No, there was a big inquest.
Right, okay.
They interviewed a load of people. They've got these 2 witnesses I mentioned. I think they had a few more as well.
Mhm.
And then they had a public burial of him afterwards. Because they never figured, spoilers, they never figured out who it is.
Okay.
Oh, so he's a bit like he's a John Doe then, isn't he?
Yeah.
Spoilers, well, I don't know what John Doe is.
Refers to an unknown male, and a Jane Doe is an unknown female in
Okay.
kind of police terms.
Right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you did kind of spoil that we never find out who it is, but I think I needed that just to make this more credible, because it's just, yeah.
So we'll go through sort of each of the items and see how we could sort of piece information about them, trying to work out who this guy is. So for the cigarettes were of a more expensive branding of the packet.
Which was Army Club, right?
Which was Army Club. I'm not sure what brands of cigarettes were. You could probably find out, but I didn't write it down. I don't think it's that important.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Cigarette packet switching was a fashionable thing during this time. However, people would normally have cheaper cigarettes in a more expensive packet in an attempt to seem more upper class than they actually were.
That would make sense.
From now on, I'll call the guy TSM because it's easier. So for the Somerton Man. Yeah. So TSM appeared to be doing the opposite. Perhaps he wanted to appear more working class, or perhaps he had acquired some
I was going to
cigarettes
suggest
from another
that
person.
you could maybe want it the other way round.
Yeah. Or maybe he'd bought some loose cigarettes from someone else and just threw it in the packet he already had.
Yeah, I suppose him trying to seem less affluent than perhaps he would be, would that fit with him not wearing a hat? Is that something that would be more of the time of him trying to be poorer?
Also, if he's wearing a suit and like well-pressed suit.
Yeah, he might have cut the labels out of
so...
himself as well to hide the fact that it might be a fancy brand of a suit.
Yeah, I feel like even cheap brands might have labels though.
Yeah, but if you've got like a really nice suit that's got something embroidered in it to say that it's this brand that is really expensive, cutting that out is going to make it.
Then it just becomes a normal suit.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
No, I know what you mean. I don't know. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll skip forwards a little bit to approximately 6 weeks after the body was found. The authorities found a suitcase which has been checked into the Adelaide Station cloakroom on the 30th of November. So this is the day before the body was found.
Okay.
It's safe to assume that this case was owned by the Somerton Man because the clothing inside was of a similar style and size to that of the clothes the man was wearing. There was also brown thread in the case, which matched stitching on repaired items he was wearing. As with the clothes found in the body, all of the labels have been removed, except for a tie with the name T. Keane on it, a singlet with the name Keane, and a laundry bag that was marked Keane. And these are all different spellings of Keane. So
okay.
One has an E at the end and another one doesn't, and stuff like that. Other notable items found within the suitcase include a table knife, which had been cut down and sharpened, a pair of sharpened scissors, handmade sheaths for both of these implements, an electrician's screwdriver, a green soap dish, which contained a woman's hairpin, 2 airmail stickers, and 9 envelopes, 8 being large and 1 small.
Okay, I assume all these envelopes were empty.
They were.
That's the
That's a weird list of items, isn't it?
yeah. I don't know what to say. That's such a weird mix of stuff.
So when you say airmail stickers, so that's obviously, as it says on the tin, that's things that have been flown in. The station that he's in, is it?
It's a train
it
station.
train station? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
airmail stickers, I imagine, are like
Yeah, international shipping.
Yeah, they're like stamps, but for
Mhm.
Yeah,
international, right?
I suppose national shipping as well in Australia because it's so big.
I guess so, yeah. So we'll talk about the labels. Removal of the labels from the clothes suggests that either the Somerton man wanted to keep his identity a secret, or someone else removed them after his death. If the second is true, then either the killer wanted to obscure the identity of his victim, or someone else was helping TSM conceal his identity. But it seems a stretch that another person got the case from the station, selectively removed some of the labels, put the clothes back in the case neatly, and returned the case back to the cloakroom without the employees knowing.
Yeah, so the clothes in the suitcase that were found also had their labels removed.
They had their labels removed.
Okay.
They were neatly like folded and stuff like that, and seemed to be organised. So they hadn't been like hurriedly thrown into the
Mhm.
case. And the employees hadn't been aware that the case had been checked out and then returned
Yeah.
at any point. Regarding the labels that were present in the suitcase, a search concluded that there was no tea keen missing in any English-speaking country. It's likely that the keen items were maybe recently bought second-hand items or they were stolen. So the police believe that whoever removed the tags from the clothes either overlooked the keen items or purposely left them in there as like a red herring.
But then, if he'd nicked them though, surely the spelling should be the same in all of them because they belong to the
Unless
same
they were
person.
knockoff brands or
That I read somewhere that maybe the missing E was like had been like scratched off or like rubbed off, so it was supposed to be
Okay.
all the same spelling, but one of them was missing an E because the last E had been rubbed off or whatever.
Got you.
Anyway, so the airmail stickers suggest that TSM may have been corresponding with someone at a distance. Several of the envelopes were small and square, like you'd use for Christmas cards. Given the date, he may have been sending cards overseas to arrive before Christmas. These point to the fact that TSM wasn't an isolated person and probably had some sort of social links, either in the country or abroad. So, if we can guess kind of what nationality he was, a lot of the items that belong to the Somerton Man point towards him being American. His coat had a kind of stitching that was only done in America at the time. The aluminium comb was of type that would have normally been carried by Americans rather than Australians. And also, chewing gum was an American habit. So, like, gum would be like an Australian childish sort of kid thing to do, whereas Americans in the 50s, adults would probably chew gum.
I'm not sure outside of America as well, but juicy fruit is like it's quite worldwide now, I guess. It's one of the bigger
Yeah,
brands, but I think
I'm not sure if it would have been shipped into Australia at the time.
yeah, that's what I'm guessing because it's 1948. It's just after the war as well,
Mhm.
so it could be shipped. I don't know if they visited Australia much in the war.
I don't think so. I know Australians were involved in World War II,
Mhm.
but I think they were mostly involved in the Asian front, like against Japan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, however, the cigarettes and matches found in the body were British in origin. So Army Club's a British brand, and I'm not sure what make the matches were, but they were also British. Okay, so let's get to the meat of this mystery, where it gets its name from. So we're gonna go back in time a little bit. So this is April 1949, 4.5 months after the body was found. It was re-examined by I think the original guy who did the autopsy and maybe one other person. The most notable discovery was that inside his fob pocket, which is the small pocket like that you have inside your pocket, which nowadays is useless, but back then I think it was used for like watches and stuff.
Yeah, your pocket watch.
Yeah. So inside this little pocket, there was a small piece of rolled up paper. The scrap was so deep within the pocket that it required tweezers to remove, and this is why it had been missed the first time around. Printed on the paper were the words Tamam Shud, which is where we get the name of the case.
Ah.
The word is Persian and can be loosely translated as finished or ended. And there is a photo on the article somewhere of the piece of paper.
Mad. So he's presumably Western man with predominantly Western property who has something written in Persian in his pocket.
Yep.
That makes no sense.
So the word actually comes from a poetry book called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I'm probably butchering that. It's by Edward Fitzgerald, and the book ends with the words Tamam Shud, and so it was deduced that the scrap was likely ripped from a copy of this book.
Mhm.
And this was kind of like a bit of a popular book at the time. It was like a fad, I guess. And they're like a load of Persian poems which they translated into English.
Right.
Right, following me?
Yeah.
So obviously, a search is then done for the copy of the book that it's been ripped from.
Yeah.
And the exact copy was found in July 1949 in a car owned by a chemist called John Freeman. Freeman had remembered that his brother-in-law had left a copy of the Rubaiyat some months before in the glove box, and noticed that the last page of the book had a rectangular tear where the words Tamam Shud should have been. The brother-in-law, however, said that he found the book in the back footwell of the car and assumed it had belonged to Freeman. So, like, both of them were using
They're
the car
both.
and they
Yeah.
thought it belonged to the other one. So they hadn't, like, bothered with it. They didn't think it was weird or anything. By his recollection, when he found the book, the car had been parked on Jetty Road near the Pier Hotel, which is just to the north of Somerton Park Beach, on the 20th of November. This is around 11 days before the body was found. Freeman gave the book to the authorities, who forensically examined it. They made two discoveries regarding the book. The first was that the torn-out paper was from the copy of this Rubaiyat, and the second was that, on the back page of the book, it contained faint writing, most likely as indentations. So, like, if you imagine you're leaning on the book and you're writing
Yeah.
on another piece of paper, it would indent.
Okay. Yeah.
Was there any writing in the rest of the book?
No, besides the normal printing of the
Yeah.
book. Well, they didn't mention any other writing, I'll put it that way.
I just wonder what in my mind. What I'm wondering is whether or not somebody could have been tracing the word. So like if you put a piece of paper over the top and then you rewrite over the top of where it says Tamam Shud,
Well,
like to copy the font or whatever, however it's written.
let me say what the writing was of, and then you can.
Oh, okay.
So the writing was of a phone number, along with a series of random letters which looked like a coded message. And in the article, if you scroll quite a ways down, you can see a picture of the coded message.
Oh yeah, the code.
Okay.
The code.
Well, it means absolutely nothing.
So
Rugoababd.
it consists of 5 lines of text in capital letters, and the second line is crossed out.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. And people think the second line's crossed out because they made a mistake, because it seems to be similar to one of the other lines.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah, so they think he was starting to write it out and then messed up and started again.
Oh, what do you mean as the third line? That's
Yeah.
I think it's the third line.
Or
I'm not
fourth.
looking at a photo at the moment.
No, it's the second
the
line.
The fourth one.
The fourth
It's in
actual
the-
line. Sorry, yeah.
M-I-A, and then
Mhm.
he messed up and said O instead of B. So, despite countless attempts by people much smarter than me, to this day this code still hasn't been deciphered. There are, however, a number of theories regarding its decryption, and the guy who made the blog we're using has written a similar piece on cracking the code, if you want to read it. I think that's linked in that
Yeah,
that
can be
part.
found here, yeah.
Yeah, I read that. It's quite a good write-up as well. It's possible that the original copy of the Rubaiyat was a cipher for this code. However, no identical version of the book has ever been found, and the original copy has either been lost or destroyed. So the long and short of it is, we don't know what this code is or what it says.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the phone number. It belonged to a local woman named Jessica Thompson, who was a nursing student. The police questioned her about the case, and she said that she didn't know the man, nor why her phone number was in the back of the book. She was familiar with the Rubaiyat, however, as she had given a copy to a man called Alf Boxall in August 1945, before he went overseas to fight in World War II.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to get the idea that this man is a soldier.
Yeah, that was kind of my initial presumption. Just around the time, the fact that he's got bits from all over. Like, I'm sure
Bits from
World
all
War
over the
II
world that he could have traded, I'm thinking.
Yeah, World War II, I'm sure something rings a bell with Persia.
I mean, Persia's Iran now.
Yeah, well, it's Iran now, yeah. I don't know if it was at the time.
I'm not sure then, yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of
that...
the Middle Eastern countries they did go to in World War II as well.
I think they were on our side in World War II.
Yeah. So again, what if he thought maybe he didn't necessarily go there, but if he would have had connections with
other soldiers.
For some reason as well, when you said he had the aluminium comb, that just reminded me of army, like just having.
Yeah.
I know back in those days it might have just been commonplace to have a comb on you at all times, and even some people these days will just carry a comb. I don't because I'm bald. But even when I had hair, I didn't. But like, I don't think that's not the point anyway. My point being, it reminded me personally of the soldier sort of theme.
Yeah, okay. And if that girl's given that book to somebody that's then gone abroad potentially, I wonder whether or not that's how he's received the book. Oh wait, no, he didn't receive the book, did he? He just had a bit of paper from the book. What was his name? John Freeman. John Freeman, Freeman, some scientist.
He was a chemist, right?
So it's him that's got the book though. So that actually doesn't fit.
Well, it was in his car.
Oh, true.
But he never claimed to own the book. He didn't know where it came from.
Okay.
So maybe you give a lift to this guy, or
yeah, that's what I'm wondering. And the guy's left the book in his car.
Maybe.
But then surely yeah, okay. The plot thickens.
The police asked her what she thought the Rubaiyat was about, and she responded love poetry. So perhaps she was in a relationship with TSM and she'd given him a copy. She also told the police that an unknown man had asked her neighbour about a nurse living in Jessica's house. She thought this happened in the latter part of 1948. The police also showed Jessica a plasticast bust of TSM in the hopes that she could identify him. The detective claims that upon seeing the bust, Jessica looked like she was going to faint, and that for the remainder of the interview she stared at the floor, with her eyes avoiding the general proximity of the bust. In the detective's opinion, Jessica knew TSM's identity. So naturally, after this interview, the police suspected that Alf Boxall was TSM. However, in July 1949, he was found to be alive in Sydney. When questioned, he was unaware of any link between himself and TSM. He still had his copy of the Rubaiyat, which had been signed by Jessica, and the last page of the book was intact.
Oh, damn.
Ruined that for you.
That throws that one out. Thanks, Alec, because you couldn't have given us that spoiler a few minutes ago.
In order, besides the train station bit where I skipped forwards in time.
That's true.
So sorry, he had a fully intact book.
A fully intact book.
Right, okay.
The front page of it was signed by Jessica. She signed it as Jestin. That was one of her nicknames. And she'd written out her favourite quote from the book or whatever. It's like a message to him.
Did she write her phone number in it by any chance?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But also at this time when she met Alf Boxall, she wasn't living in Adelaide. She was in Sydney.
Okay, got you.
So let's go a bit more in depth into Jessica's life to see how she may be connected to TSM. She was born in 1912 as Jessie Ellen Harkness and spent the majority of her youth in Melbourne. During this time, she met her future husband, Prosper or George McTaggart Thompson.
What a name!
So Prosper was his nickname.
That is the greatest name I've ever heard.
And his name was actually George McTaggart Thompson. She became a nursing student and worked at the Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney during World War II. So she'd moved to Sydney at some point after she grew up and then was working in a hospital. In August 1994, she met Alf Boxall and gave him the Rubaiyat before he went to war. Around October 1946, she became pregnant and as a result never took her final nursing exam.
Okay.
After this, she moved back in with her parents in Melbourne. Allegedly around this time, Jessica was going to kill herself by jumping off a cliff, but she was stopped by Prosper, who happened to be passing by. So they hadn't seen each other since they were kids. He happened to be passing by and he stopped her, and then I guess they sort of fell in love. And the two of them moved to Adelaide in early 1947. During World War II, Prosper had dealt on the black market and so was well known in Melbourne as someone who could acquire anything you want. Officially, his job was running the taxi ranks, and once they moved to Adelaide, he had switched to selling cars. So a bit of a shady guy. From what people say about him anyway. Whilst they lived in Adelaide, the two of them seemed to feign being a married couple, despite Prosper being still married to someone else. So they were living together. He was married to someone else. I'm not sure whether he'd abandoned his family in Melbourne and moved to Adelaide with her, or whether they moved to Adelaide with him. I'm not entirely sure what the deal is with that, and nowhere seems to mention it. But the point is, he's a bit of a scumbag, anyway. So in July 1947, she gave birth to her son, named Robin Thompson. The birth certificate listed Prosper as the father of Robin, despite that not being the case, and both of them knew it. Jessica had managed to avoid putting Harkness on the birth certificate by changing her name to Thompson earlier in the year. So they weren't married, but she changed to Thompson and they pretended they were married.
Okay.
Almost a year and a half after Robin was born, TSM was found dead on a nearby beach. So who was Robin's father? That's the big question at the moment. So as I mentioned before, this case was looked at again in 2010. A researcher called Professor Derek Abbott compared photos of TSM and Robin. He found that, like TSM, Robin's upper ear hollow was larger than his lower ear hollow, and also he had hypodontia.
Mad.
He estimated that the chances of TSM and Robin independently having both these features is somewhere between 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million. So it seems quite likely that TSM was Robin's father.
Which would explain why she went ghostly
Exactly.
in the interview. Because she probably didn't want it to be public knowledge that her and her fella were mimicking a family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a pride thing.
Yeah,
then
this
as
was
well.
the 50s as well.
Yeah.
And they were, I guess, sort of middle class-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not all. Remember how I talked about how TSM may have been a ballet dancer? Well,
Oh no.
Jessica took Robin to ballet lessons when he was young, and he eventually became a professional dancer in the Australian ballet.
Mad.
Wait, this is much later on after.
This is much better once he'd grown up.
Right, so that could be a coincidence,
It could be,
or it could be that
but it
Jessica
seems like
was
she's
influenced by TSM,
pushed him towards being a ballet dancer,
like his father was.
like his father was.
Following in his father's ballet shoes.
Yes, squeezing into those pointy pink shoes and dancing the night away.
It don't have to be pink, but yeah.
You don't have to be pink, but I mean, if they're not pink, you're doing it wrong.
True. I'm not a ballet dancer. I can't argue this.
If you're going to do ballet as a man in the 50s, you got to go full hog, right?
Uh-huh.
Right, so here's a weird thing about this investigation.
Here's the weird thing.
Yeah, it gets even weirder.
Thank God we finally got to the weird bit.
Whilst looking at this case, Professor Abbott contacted Robin's daughter, called Rachel Egan. They spent a few days discussing the case, and by the end of the weekend, Abbott had proposed to Rachel. They married 4 months later and now have 3 children. If TSM was Robin's father, like Abbott thinks it is, then his children are TSM's great-grandchildren.
That's mad.
So he's like locked in DNA, right? He owns the DNA of TSM now for his evil schemes. / not evil schemes.
Yeah, / non-nefarious activities.
Right, so let's try and work out this guy's identity. As I said before, the short of it is that we still don't really know who he was. There have been many positive identifications of the body, with the police announcing that they had received the 231st solution to his identity in November 1953, but none of them are concrete. So while the case is going on, it's pretty public knowledge, it's pretty popular. Loads of people are coming forward saying, oh, I know who this guy is, but it's not, they haven't really got any evidence for it.
Yeah, just jumping on the bandwagon a bit.
Yeah. The most likely identification is from 2011, where an Adelaide woman contacted one of the men who had helped Abbott in his investigation about an ID card she had. So Abbott had like a team of researchers in, I think, Melbourne University, and she contacted one of those people. She found an ID card of a man called H.C. Reynolds in her father's possessions. The card is of an 18-year-old of British origin, and the researcher deemed that there were similarities between Reynolds and TSM in terms of eyes, lips, and nose, and both of them had a mole in the same place. However, Reynolds appears to have a chin dimple, whereas TSM doesn't. So there is a photo of this ID card in the article, quite near the bottom, I believe. It's under an identity for TSM. There's the ID card and then a bit of text, and then below it, the photo, and then TSM.
Got it.
So, do you reckon that's the same person?
It's it's too hard to tell. But
they've got a different hairline.
Yeah, but the angle, different, remember?
The guy looks like he's got a bit of a widow's peak, though, on the left. Whereas it doesn't.
Maybe. Their ears are similar. I'll give them that.
Their ears are quite similar. Yeah.
And remember, these are 30 years apart, He's like late 40s, right?
I was gonna say,
The
yeah.
guy, the dimple though is so different.
It is, but the researcher argues that it might be like a problem with the photograph, like a shadow or something.
So I'm thinking as well though. On the right, his face looks different, but if he was poisoned, would that have made his face swell up? Like when on death with like rigor mortis and stuff like that, would it make your face look different if it
Yeah, I think
swelled?
Yeah,
generally just dying
possibly.
changes how you look, right?
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
definitely.
You can see all the wrinkles around his eyes as well, like that.
Yeah.
That definitely is the difference in age, though.
Yeah, what age are the two people meant to be in these two pictures?
The ID card is 18, I think. And TSM, they think is 40s, maybe late 40s.
Maybe that accounts for it then.
Like that's like 20 years later, isn't it? So
Yeah, it's quite far. 30 years.
He is wearing a different suit too.
He's wearing a different tie.
Die.
It says T Keen on it.
So you say that his hairline is slightly different, like it would be potentially if he did lose hair.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look. Again, I think Alex is right. It's the angle. Like
Yeah.
in the ID photograph, he is kind of leaning not forward, but leaning straight ahead. In the other one, he is definitely lying on his back, and it's kind of like
His head up.
an up angle, or down. I don't know which angle it is, looking from down below his face.
Yeah, but they still haven't said that this is the guy. They're still not really sure. And that was 9 years ago, so I don't think they're probably still looking at it. Right, so let's talk about some theories about how he might have died. So the first one that jumps out, especially to me when I first heard this, was that he was a spy.
Okay. It would make a lot more sense because of everything. The weird collection of stuff. He might carry weapons on him, so that's why he made the makeshift stuff in haste, maybe, or all the labels removed from his clothes. He'd still be in correspondence with someone.
Yep.
And you could argue that.
But I think as a spy, though, yeah, but surely as a spy, you would have things that make you inconspicuous. He's got things that are clearly not
like a fake mustache, or
exactly
like what?
like you wouldn't carry British cigarettes with an American comb. Like you'd have stuff that was local.
No, you will. I'm not a spy. I am not professionally educated in this area
surely you
whatsoever.
blend in.
Well,
I just think you'd be disguised as a local to avoid suspicion. If someone looks at you and go, "Oh yeah, you're wearing an American tailored suit," you're probably not a local.
I agree, but again, this is just after the war. So what if a lot of people? I say just after. It's like 3 years later, but that's still people might still have been stranded in different. Not stranded, but like if the war took them to different parts of the world, you might have picked up an American suit from an army friend, or
true.
But then I'm not arguing the fact that he was a spy, but I'm not disagreeing. I just the spy thing in terms of his possessions. There's nothing there to suggest he was a spy. There's no like documents or anything like that.
No.
But also, if he was a spy and he was traveling around everywhere, you could argue, yes, that he would get a lot of local stuff to disguise himself wherever he went. But then if he was local, presumably more people would know him.
True.
So maybe making himself out to be someone from a completely different place. Potentially from Britain, potentially from America. But I mean, we've all got, I know it's not 1948, but we've all got stuff made from all over the world.
Yeah. Part of me wonders though, if they're thinking that he's a spy and then you say he's died. So if he's a spy that's died by accident, then fair enough. But if this guy's been discovered and killed, why would you leave him in a public place? Surely if you were a spy, unless you're trying to make an example of them, if you're trying to make an example of him and you were killing this guy and he was a spy, surely you'd want that to be either massively high profile as in he had a concrete identity, or you just would hide the body.
Yeah, I think the defamation of character thing, we looking at it now, we have no idea who he is. And obviously we can see that people are trying to work out, even to this day, what's going on. but the people in the organization that he might have been working for as a spy, straight away they'd be like, oh shit, they've got killed. So
maybe.
But again, I agree with what you're saying along the lines of like, if they were going to make a statement, wouldn't they just no? I was going to say, wouldn't they send it to like the headquarters or whatever? But if you're a spy for someone, chances are it's a completely underground secret company. But
That's what I mean. So if say you get to say I am Australian and I'm spying in England, and I was discovered by the English government, there's no way they're going to make it so that an unknown person with an unknown identity has been found in a public place. You're either going to take it so that this person, nobody knows of this person because they have no traceability, so no one's going to realize that they're missing because nobody knows who they are, or you're going to say, we found an Australian person whose name is this, and he's clearly from Australia and he's clearly spying. Like you'd make a big deal of it, and there's not a big deal made of him.
Well,
it's a mystery.
Also, maybe they wouldn't do that because making a statement and identifying that someone is a spy would in turn put it back on whoever's revealed them to be a spy. Like, how do you know they were a spy? Why were you being spied upon?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like,
okay, so shall I try and convince you then?
Yeah, please.
So it's mostly circumstantial evidence for the spy theory. The general time period was around the Cold War, and this was a heightened time of espionage activity. His general appearance and neatness could be considered spy traits. So, like, they don't want to sort of stand out. So, like, they kind of look a bit generic. He wanted to hide his identity, and he did this by removing the labels from all his belongings, and he didn't carry any ID. The unused train ticket may have been a way to throw off potential pursuers. He had weapons in this case, in the form of those scissors, which had been cut, and also a sharpened knife.
The sharpened knife.
With sheaths for both of them as well.
Yeah,
so they didn't stab his other stuff, I guess.
Yeah. And so that he could have technically concealed them as well.
Yeah. He carried a book containing what appears to be a code, and he had previously ditched the book so as not to be associated with it. So the assumption is that he's thrown it in Freeman's car as he's passing it. Because remember, around this time, people didn't really lock their cars, and they often had like no roofs on them.
Yeah, open roofs or no
open
windows.
roofs.
Yeah.
People weren't really stealing cars that often, so there wasn't a big security concern with leaving it unlocked. Also, he had a scrap of paper hidden on his person, which may have been a message. Remember, Tamam Shud means finished or ended.
Yeah.
So if a spy killed him, they might leave it on the body.
That's true.
And being poisoned is consistent with how a spy might be killed, and other spies have been killed with digitalis around the same time.
But literally all signs point to the spy thing. From the way you've just described it, obviously.
I'm very convincing.
Yeah, I don't know how to argue against any of that.
No, I feel there's a butt coming on though, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have any counter arguments to him being a spy?
I don't have counter arguments for spy, but I have plenty of other theories.
Are there more? I suppose there are probably more plausible theories.
There are. There are pros and cons to each of them, anyway. So maybe he killed himself. So suicide is another popular theory. The Tamam Shud note in his pocket, which again translates to finished, can be seen as a suicide note. He is well dressed, which is a common feature of suicides.
Yeah, true. Like got all his affairs in order, sort of thing.
Poison's a common method of suicide. He may have removed his labels because he had pre-planned this and didn't want his friends or family to find out. The big thing is perhaps he'd been rejected by Jessica, or maybe she had said he can't see his son or whatever. He threw away the book she'd given him in his rage, and then he killed himself. If this is the case, the Tamam Shud note may have been a message for Jessica.
Yeah, it's very personal, that, isn't it?
Yep.
It does kind of make sense as well, the way he propped himself up, because that's the main thing for me. It's like the way that they found the body, where he was just kind of chilling there. And if eyewitnesses saw his arm go up and stuff, that could have been as he was passing away.
Perhaps. He was pretty slumped, though. Like, if you imagine you're lying on a bed and
you've been there a while and you haven't
your upper back and neck is like against the headboard. That's kind of how he was lying.
Yeah, he's basically leant with his chin on his chest.
Basically, yeah.
There is a picture of him as well
Yeah,
on
there
the
is.
article.
So the suicide theory is supported by the death of a man called George Marshall, who committed suicide in Sydney in 1945. He was found lying on his back near the water's edge, and on his chest was an open copy of the Rubaiyat. So TSM may have been a copycat.
That's an interesting one.
It is very
So how many
interesting.
years before was that? Sorry.
45 to 48. Same country as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so do you want to hear some problems with the suicide theory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no poison or receptacle found near TSM's body.
Oh yeah.
So if he'd taken the poison, what would he have done with whatever it was holding it in? Unless it was like a pill or something.
Okay, so how quick would digitalis, for example, take to be effective?
So from my research, it seems to be pretty immediate.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you have a big dose of it, so it's digitalis is also foxglove, the naturally occurring flower. So it is actually probably reasonable to be able to get hold of, and it's a medicine now. But
Yeah.
well, it was I think it was probably would have been a medicine then. To be fair.
I mean,
But in
definitely during
certain
the
doses.
50s,
Yeah.
you could buy like cocaine and heroin, couldn't you, from the pharmacy?
Yeah, you could. Yeah. To be fair, yeah, it probably was.
Okay,
In
so
fact,
if
there's
you
a
had
thing
poisoned
in-
himself with a pill, for example, presumably there would be some remnants in his mouth as well.
Yeah, I
of the
think
pill,
so.
like casing, right?
Maybe,
Well, yeah,
but
if it's
I did
sorry.
say that they would have had problems detecting digitalis during the time in an autopsy.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate that is because I don't do autopsies and I wasn't alive in the 50s. But I'm assuming they could do it nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's probably a test that you can run to look for traces of. It'll be like a chemical analysis where they run it through a mass spectrometer and get loads of weird figures and things from it. I think also the thing that you've got to remember about tablets then is that they were literally tablets. So like nowadays, a lot of medicines are capsules, but back then they would have been like chalky tablets.
Okay.
So like you'd expect if there was presumably chalk on him.
Yep.
If you'd had a tablet, like if you chewed a tablet, there would be chalk residue in your teeth.
Another problem with it, which we kind of covered anyway, is that a suicide in 1948 most likely wouldn't have involved an undetectable poison. So that goes to maybe digitalis is hard to get a hold of.
Possibly.
Yeah, like even then, like I wouldn't even know where to get a hold of digitalis.
I guess a phone.
For example.
No, but it's a prescription only medicine.
Like, okay, yeah, you don't get me wrong. You can get over the counter stuff that can probably kill you in enough dose. But yeah, okay. Actually, I don't know why I'm arguing that. It's well documented that people do try to kill themselves with pills, etc. So, yeah, I can't argue either way.
So the third theory I've got is that he was murdered. So if we assume this, then Jessica seems to be the most likely suspect, as she was the only person that we can be aware was associated with him.
Or would have any kind of motive, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of
well,
motives,
maybe not motive, because Jessica's fella, what was his name? Boxall?
Prosper.
Prosper's motive presumably could be his wife has a child with somebody else, and it could be jealousy.
It could be. I haven't looked into Prosper killing her, but we could talk about that a bit in a sec if you want. So for Jessica anyway, motives maybe he may have raped her, and that's how she got pregnant.
Yeah.
TSN may have been jealous of Prosper, so the other way round, and they may have been threatening to expose Jessica's false marriage. So like a blackmail sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good one, because that's like if you're down an alley where you've got two turns, it either happens or you do something about it. You doing something about it is probably going to be silencing this chap, isn't it?
So there's sort of like two ways that this could have gone down. So either he could have been poisoned at her house and then made his way down to the beach, or he may have died there in their house and then she and maybe Prosper took his body down to the beach.
The thing is, though, if you moved a body, surely that body is fairly, like, ruffled. Like it would have been.
Yep, maybe.
It would have been like disrupted. Like even if it's a case of you've got a shirt on, you'd expect maybe like the shirt to become untucked. This guy's like pristine, isn't he?
Yeah, it seems to be.
And this is the thing, there were eyewitnesses as well.
Yeah.
So
didn't
what time of
say
the day
Oh,
was he
yeah.
found?
I didn't say it before, but he didn't really have any like sand on him, so it seemed like he hadn't been on the beach very long.
Yeah, because the
Mm.
wind would have picked it up, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also like your shoes. If he had tread on his shoes would be full of sand. The
Mhm.
tread would be full of sand if he'd been walking on the beach.
Yeah, but they
Whereas
were
if
like
you're placed on
nicely
the
shined.
beach and they're shiny, yeah, it makes it does. To be fair, that lends credit to him being put on the beach.
Mhm.
But then, if eyewitnesses have seen him alive, well, maybe he was calling for help but couldn't speak, and that was
Maybe.
why his arm was waving out because he'd been poisoned at that point.
So let's say that he was poisoned at the house. A problem with this is that, as I said before, poisons such as digitalis tend to have immediate effects.
Hmm.
So it seems unlikely that he would have walked. I think it's quite a ways, like 800 meters or something, down to the beach. It's
It's a
a
considerable
stretch
way.
that he would have walked all that way without dropping dead in the street.
Yeah, or even looking awful and somebody seeing somebody looking awful and doing
Yeah.
something about it.
Or
Right, yeah.
even
So,
him being aware that he felt bad and like stopping someone and saying, "Phone an ambulance."
Yeah,
for
help
me.
me. Yeah.
what if Jessica and Prosper was his name?
Yeah.
So them two, what if they plotted it? They killed him, but then a giant squid put him on the beach.
Yeah, but there's no sucker marks.
Ah, okay.
Aw.
Okay.
The one
Yeah.
flaw in your entire argument: no sucker
Yeah.
marks.
I
And
think
also, giant squid couldn't resist a quick nip with the beak.
quick nip, yeah.
There's no sign of mutilation via beak.
Okay. It's been I think a while since we made any kind of reference,
It
and I
has
feel
been.
sad. If we could go back and edit them and just cram in a giant squid reference somewhere.
I think eventually, once we have enough episodes, I'll edit all of the giant squid references
Yeah.
into a supercut.
A supercut, yeah.
We'll do a clip show like the Simpsons do.
Yeah.
All right with that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about if he was poisoned at the house, but if he died at the house and he took his body down to the beach, if this was done during daytime, then it's amazing they weren't seen by other people. And if this was done overnight, then we have to neglect the witnesses that I talked about before, because they saw him at 7 p.m. the night before.
Yeah, he's got to be there for a long time.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So he was definitely there overnight.
If we assume the witnesses are correct,
Right.
there is problems with witnesses in murder cases. I mean, you'll know about that, Sean, with your degree and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'll be issues with the witnesses at the time because of stress and loads of other factors, but then I can't remember the term or the theory for it, but basically the idea that if you get told some information, you'll make the presumption in your head like, oh wait, but I was there. I must have seen him. For example,
you'll change the story in your memory.
to what fits for the facts that have been told to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So another problem with the murder theory is that it doesn't explain the missing labels. As I said before, they would have had to get his suitcase from the train station and then return it back without being seen.
Oh, yeah.
I believe the missing labels were just a thing, a quirk.
Just
that
a weird thing that he did.
Yeah,
A
because
quirk.
some people do some weird stuff. I think it was actually quite common. I could be completely making this up. The idea in my head is that everyone used to label all their clothes. If everyone's wearing a suit and everyone's wearing a hat and everyone's wearing the same shoes and everyone's carrying around a briefcase, which, the fact that he didn't have a hat, for example, was very odd. So people might have had similar sort of suits and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know what his reasons would be, but I believe that it could just not be a coincidence, but it could just be a thing.
I wonder if it could be like a personality quirk, like somebody who's got obsessive compulsive disorder who removes all their labels from their clothes, or
yeah.
The other side of things is maybe paranoid and removes all the labels from their clothes.
Yeah, and there's no way we can test that because obviously he's dead now.
No.
So, and no one. I mean that in that wouldn't be anywhere in the theory of like factual evidence because there's no way they could prove it because they don't know who he was to find medical records.
Mm-hmm. It also doesn't explain the code at all.
Mm.
No,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I definitely think that looks like a code.
It does. Yeah, it does definitely look like a code.
It's not someone practicing their handwriting or something like that.
No. I like this because every single time you argue one point, honestly, apart from the spy thing, I can't think, even if we've discussed it, I can't think in my head an argument to say that he wasn't a spy. But okay, no, I can, because of the thing we discussed about like how he was killed and where the body was left and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like nothing adds up. You choose one theory and you go at it, and then it's like, well, this. How do you
Yeah.
explain this?
Problems with each of them.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one I've got is that he may have died accidentally. So the enlarged spleen and liver problems of TSM point towards pre-existing medical conditions, and so he may have been in a weakened state. There may have been an accident while he's visiting Jessica, such as an accidental overdose of painkillers, or an allergic reaction to something she gave him. And then obviously he wandered down to the beach and then happened to die on the beach due to that.
I mean, yeah, he could have literally just gone there. The fact that he had an unsmoked cigarette in his ear, like, it was tucked into his ear, right?
Yes.
Into his collar, it was.
Into his collar.
Yeah, well, didn't we say it was between his neck and his collar?
I think there was both. I think there was one behind his ear and also one on his collar. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, it is. He had one tucked behind his ear and another partially smoked cigarette tucked between his cheek and his coat's collar.
That makes me think that the one that's between his collar and his cheek is fallen out of his mouth and landed there.
Yeah.
What it seems like. It was
So he was
partially
smoking
smoked.
as he's died. So maybe his cigarette was laced with something.
Ooh.
Maybe.
I don't know what it would be laced with, but
well, especially if the person who knows him.
Poisson.
That's the thing.
Fish. He's actually a fish from the sea has killed him. The whole time we've been thinking about poison, and in fact, what we really meant was poisson.
Oh yeah, I was pronouncing it wrong this entire time. There's two S's in it.
There are no traces of poisson. I don't think it was the cigarettes, because I think that people would have, the amount of detail that people have gone into the autopsy and stuff like that, I think they would have tested the cigarettes. And the
True,
fact
but
that
we said there was no.
they were...
Yeah, but we said there's no receptacle for the poison, and we haven't mentioned the cigarette.
Okay.
That's all.
Mm-hmm.
But
the cigarette could be the receptacle for the poison. That's what I'm thinking.
Seeing as they couldn't actually, it could be laced with something, even though they couldn't test it because they didn't check. They couldn't test what was in his body either.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another thing about accidental death, the position of his body and head whilst he was lying on the beach may have resulted in accidental asphyxiation. His weakened state or medication he was taking for his health problems may have contributed to this. So that was another thing they talked about in the autopsy, that he might have accidentally suffocated.
That's a grim way to go, though, without fighting it.
I don't. Well, the fact that the medication could have kind of knocked him out and he wasn't able to get up quick enough, or
yeah, he might have just been like woozy or something.
Yeah, because if you've taken loads of well, that's how heroin users die often. Like they'll basically suffocate themselves because they are so unconscious they can't protect themselves, so they literally either vomit in the obstruct the airway, or they just close off the airway for their position. The thing that doesn't match up with that very well, though, is the fact that there was blood in his stomach.
Oh God, yeah.
Like it just doesn't sound like it's in keeping with him suffocating. Like, you don't just randomly bleed into your stomach. Well, I mean, some people do actually, but tend not to.
Presuming there's an abnormal amount of blood in the stomach.
Well, there shouldn't be any blood. Your stomach shouldn't have blood in it.
Okay, yeah.
That's
that kills the person.
Well, yeah. The blood's meant to be in your bloodstream.
Yeah. All right.
It's technically still inside them, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That blood's helping out, right?
Okay. Before we go on to the blood in the stomach thing, because I completely forgot about that. My impression of how he was sitting and how they found the body is that, like you described, when you're sitting in bed and you're like sat upright, and then you end up with just like your upper back and your head resting against the headrest or the what's the top of a headboard. I'm speaking from experience because
You've got a terrible back.
I've got a terrible back, yeah, and from years of doing that, I have a terrible back. But like, if you're sat bolt upright over time, if you're watching something, playing the game, not really paying attention, not focusing on your movement, you will naturally just slide down a bit. And especially on sand, I could see that happening. So what if he was sat bolt upright, just smoking a cigarette, and then he started to slump? Because you mentioned about the asphyxiation. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it's much easier explained that he was sat there comfortably and then slumped down, especially after he passed away.
Yeah, but what killed him? If you don't think he suffocated from the slumping, what killed him? That's the question, isn't it?
Right. The way that he had I do think it's either poison or something he wasn't expecting. Like not a heart attack, but like what underlying health conditions, because the way that he had a half-smoked cigarette
indicates... say harpoon then.
what?
When you said something you wasn't expecting, my brain just went to like someone throwing a harpoon at him for some reason. And then you said half, and I was like, yeah, it's a harpoon.
Fucking hell.
I don't know how I made that leap. I think I've been thinking about Bioshock because there's a harpoon gun in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Anyway,
right.
Your point.
The fact that he was the fact that he was smoking a cigarette.
I got you now, TSN. Throws harpoon.
Giant squid froze. Yeah.
Oh my god! They were trying to kill the giant squid and they harpooned him by accident.
It bounced off.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
He was smoking a cigarette.
He was.
That fell in between his... Was there any burn marks from the cigarette?
They don't mention any.
And why did the cigarette go out? Because I don't... cigarettes these days, just wind. They're designed to just go and go and go. Well, that's the thing with wind. It'll help them continue burning. Cigarettes these days, if you make a hand-rolled cigarette, it is less likely to go because there's not the same chemicals in it and the airflow and stuff. But like, were 1948 cigarettes better rolled, for example? I don't know. We might not have the answer to hand right now, but that's what's confusing me. So was the cigarette planted there to make it look like either a suicide or the poison had got to him, blah blah blah, or not even? I don't get why it would be planted. But to me, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm arguing against myself. Like the cigarette could have just gone out.
Yeah.
But that's why, in terms of him dying, how he died, the cigarette fell out of his mouth. So either not accidental death, but just like natural causes through illness or whatever.
Okay.
Or he was poisoned. And it was at that point when the cigarette fell out of his mouth and he slumped down, that's when the poison killed him.
Yeah.
Okay. So problems with the accidental death theory. Again, it doesn't explain the missing labels. But that might be a quirk, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain the Tamam Shud note in his pocket, or the copy of the Rubaiyat which he's torn from.
Which we completely forgot about.
Which you completely...
God damn it!
The namesake of the...
Yep, the most important thing in the whole case.
The name of the whole thing that we're talking about.
And also, as I've sort of rattled on about, experts believe that TSM had died from poison induced with physiology from the autopsy.
Okay. As a counter-argument to the Tamam Shud, the code, I don't know, I'll be honest. But what if everything was completely unrelated to his death? What if it was literally just that piece of paper that he had? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I might have something in my pocket right now, which I don't. I just checked. But what if I had a random piece of paper that I'd written a quick note on, or it was something from work maybe, and it was just like a tear out of a piece of paper I was going to use to maybe write something on, but it had...
But I think the only issue with that, though, is that, yeah, okay, fair enough, you might have something that's completely incidental, but I think you'd be able to trace where that came from. It's unlikely that you'd have, like, a random note in your pocket that had no traceability.
It was from a book, though, right?
Yeah, but it was torn out of the back
and also,
page of a book.
It had been very carefully torn out around that word specifically.
It was like a punched out. It's like a punched out square. When
there's a photo in the
There's
article.
a photo. Yeah, it's a proper punched out square.
It looks very deliberate around that word.
Okay. Right, okay. So maybe he was, I don't know. Okay, so let's go back to him being ballet dancer. There you go. I was trying to think of the word after it. So let's say he was a ballet dancer. Maybe he was just interested in poetry, and maybe he tore out the Tamam Shud bit because he, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
maybe
a
he
lot
liked
of
the
meaning you
phrase.
could take from it. Yeah, yeah.
But then how does that get in Dr. Freeman's car?
I've
I
got
know.
such a smile on my face now. It's such a good mystery, isn't it?
It is really
Oh, I
good.
hate it. But I love it at the same time. Oh, man.
Those are all of the theories I've got. The article puts forward a theory, and it's basically a mixture of the suicide and accidental death theory.
Okay.
So the whole thing is that he's got health problems, and he meets Jessica in the hospital in Sydney where she's working as a nurse. And later on, he realizes he's going to die, and he sees that this guy previously in Sydney had killed himself and then staged the Tamam Shud on his chest and all that sort of stuff. So he wants to copy it to make his death memorable, but he also wants to kill himself before he like gets really bad and has to go into hospital and stuff.
Okay.
Like what's it called? What they do in Switzerland? Euthanasia.
Yeah.
He wants to like euthanize himself. So he gets in touch with Jessica to help him out with it.
Or he
And
goes, I guess he goes, does he go to try and find out where she lives? Is that why he asked the neighbour?
yeah, or something like that. Or they'd been talking already and he had her number. Also, I saw something somewhere that Prosper was doing a lot of advertising. So his number was on like leaflets and stuff around the area as well. So maybe he got a number from one of those leaflets. And he actually wanted to talk to Prosper about something. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And she basically helps him commit suicide, and that's why there's no receptacle for the poison, and that's why he's like neatly placed on the beach because he like places his body afterwards after he dies.
Or if he was sat there and she give it to him and then she walked off and then just left him to it. Which would explain why you would have the cigarette, because it's like, right, okay, he's had this poison, cracks a cigarette, has a spare one tucked behind his ear just in case he can't.
Yeah, he's waiting to die. He's taking the poison.
Yeah.
Gonna have a cigarette. I've got another one just in case it takes quite a while.
Everything about the way he was sat and the way he was presented, to me, I think this is my favourite explanation.
The thing is, though, how does Jessica get the poison? Because I know we said that she was a nurse, but she didn't finish training as a nurse, did she?
She they say she was like quite well versed in pharmaceuticals. Again, she didn't finish her training, but she could have just known what to get.
Yeah, I suppose if you go in and ask for a specific medicine, like
Yeah.
you said, lots of things were over the counter then.
Uh-huh.
If you can explain your rationale, it might be that they just go, yeah, whatever, here you go.
Yeah.
But again,
so
if something's over the counter, presumably it'd be traceable. Like was Digitalis or Obane, was that over the counter at the time?
Well, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I've seen conflicting things because I did
That's
say
what I mean, yeah.
before that it would be weird for an untraceable poison to be in a suicide, but I read something somewhere else about how it was easy to get substances like that during the time. So I don't really have an answer for you.
I think, though, surely somebody put two and two together back then, though, and would have said, have any local drugstores sold a poison to this specific person? Surely.
But again, if it wasn't, if it was poisonous after a certain dose, because the thing, what Alex said at the start was that Digitalis, for example, is a medicine, but
Yeah, you
after
have to take it a specific way for it to be a poison.
Right.
So the theory in the article is written up quite nicely as a story. It's quite a nice read. But the problem I have with it is that they talk about how his copy of the Rubaiyat, he writes the code on it while he's on the train on the way down, and they sort of just gloss over it as like it's just a thing he wrote, like maybe to remember something or like a shorthand for something, and that just like doesn't make any sense to me. It looks like a code.
It does look like a code.
In the same guide you sent, sorry, some random
Article.
stuff one
Yeah.
WordPress thing. He does go into a lot of detail. Maybe obviously there's a lot of text, so I've not read it. If I find it, it does go into a lot of detail. There's a lot of different pictures and
About the code.
from glance, yeah. from glancing
Yeah,
over it.
there is another article as well he's written all about trying to figure out what the code is.
Mhm.
But in his theory that he puts forward, he says it's not a code. He says it's just like a shorthand for something he's written down.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like notes for like a speech. Maybe that he wants to say to her, and he's written
Yeah,
it out, but
maybe.
he's written it in shorthand,
Yeah.
so that he goes. Well, I don't know. Obviously, you'd have to try and come up with some words, but
Mhm.
although weirdly, none of them are J.
Yeah. I did see somewhere as well that it commonly says that the code written in the Rubaiyat isn't similar to any World War II codes that we know about.
Mhm.
So if it's a code, it's not a common thing that the army or military or intelligence
Yeah,
agencies would have used at the time.
which perhaps pushes away the theory about him being a soldier or a spy,
It does, yeah.
because you think they would probably use something that somebody else could actually trace. Because at the moment, nobody has any idea what this means, which means it's no use to anybody.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's all I've got in terms of notes about the case. I'm really stumped. I want to think it's a spy because it's really cool.
It is really cool. That's the one thing most of all, is that because it's unexplained even now. You know, do you remember when we talked about, was it the Stonehenge episode, and we said if you had a time machine and you could go back to one instance for any of the episodes that we've seen to work out exactly the answer? I
Yeah,
now think that maybe this would be my,
you reckon?
because I really like this one.
It's cool, isn't it?
Oh, I just
Yeah,
don't get
so
it.
like I pretty much subscribe to the fact that Robin's his kid, and maybe he's a
Yeah.
spy, and he happened to be visiting Jessica to see Robin during the time, and maybe something went wrong with another spy. He was being tailed by someone else.
Okay, so to confirm again, at the time that he would have died, the child would have been born.
The child was born a year and a half after the child was
Okay,
born.
okay.
So the child would have been born in 1946. So it would fit with a potential end of war pregnancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a victory baby.
The three
A victory
people
bonk.
we know who could be the father are Alf Boxall from A
Yeah.
One Night Stand, Prosper, who
They
they
had a relationship,
hadn't
didn't they?
they hadn't seen in a very long time. She was pregnant before the suicide, remember?
Mhm.
So if he happened to stumble upon her, that's a complete lie. They would have known each other already,
Yeah.
if that's the case. And then the third person is TSM, either willingly or via rape or something like that.
But then why? I mean, I suppose that would the potential for a particularly violent crime fits with her being very shut down when the police showed her that bust of
Yep.
TSM. But then at the same time, if this person's dead, I wonder if she's like ashamed of it, because obviously it's a very different time then, or whether or not because it's an extramarital sex, even if it's rape. I wonder whether or not people would have, if that had been public knowledge, whether or not people's opinion would have been like, you've had sex outside the realms of your marriage, particularly because her relationship with Prosper was, oh, I don't know actually, was it seen by the public as being formal, even though actually legally it wasn't? Because she changed her name, right?
They got married in 1950, I think. So afterwards, they actually did get married, and they had a daughter, I believe, called Kate. But when Robin was born, their marriage wasn't official. And
But she'd legally changed her name to Thompson by that point, hadn't she?
Yeah, she had, but anyone can legally change their name.
So I wonder if she'd changed her name to cover up the fact that she was in a relationship with this guy, or to cover it up to other people that she wasn't married, but they behaved as if they were married.
Yeah, that's the assumption.
Yeah.
And the local people might have thought they were married because they were living together and they were close and whatever. They had the same last name.
Yeah, you wouldn't really think anything of it, right?
No, you wouldn't pry too much into it, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, so what do you reckon? I'm going with spy.
Are you going with American Spy then?
I think so. I don't think the H.C. Reynolds guy is him, purely because of the chin dimple.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not like 100% with anything though. Like,
No.
Okay, I'll go. I think I'm not going spy, just because of the way he died. Just nothing.
in a very spy way.
It doesn't feel right. Yeah, I guess the only thing that lines up to the spy thing, in my head at least, is an untraceable poison.
And the code.
It just purely in terms of death.
Okay.
And the way his body was found and stuff. With eyewitnesses and stuff, I think people would have seen, and especially if you're saying if a trustable eyewitness saw it the night before, dragging the body there in daylight doesn't sound right. It's more believable, yes, okay, to say that someone dragged him there overnight.
Yeah.
Then
well,
I'd start
to.
to. Yeah, but even then, you got to get him down onto the beach. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's steps down to the beach as well. There's a photo of it.
I don't know. Everything we've discussed to me lines it up to maybe some kind of natural cause, as in natural in that it was unnatural that he had an illness or an underlying health condition, or the assisted suicide thing. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense to me that, again, no receptacle for the poison. There's no explanation apart from the fact that he was poisoned. It is possible, right, for someone to just drop dead for no reason.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right. So maybe it's like just a perfect storm of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if at any other point in his life, apart from when he died, we might not have paid any attention. But because he did have this thing with Tamam Shud on it, because he did have the note, because he has got all his labels removed, all these things, I don't know. I don't think there's an answer to all of it. So I think I'm the same as you, Alex. I've got no 100% definitive thing. So what I think about that is that some of the evidence and some of the issues, some of them will be related, but I think some of it isn't going to be. Like I'm to me, the label thing, although that is quite weird and stuff, I think that is not one of the things to focus on.
Yeah, you think it's not relevant?
I don't think it's relevant. I think it's just another thing that is just weird about him or about the situation.
Yep.
And people have dwelled on it a lot. And I feel like there's a lot that you could argue is irrelevant.
Okay.
But there's also a lot that is like, what? So
if there's a statement that sums up this entire episode, that's it. Which is, there's a lot of bits that are like, what?
I'm contradicting myself a lot, but some of it is going to be completely irrelevant, but then some of it is very applicable to a lot of the theories. I don't think there's any information that doesn't have a viable reasoning for it.
Okay.
I'm going to wrap all of that up. My theory on it is that it was either an assisted suicide for the reason they've given, or just natural causes from an illness, underlying condition, whatever. Because in particular, it's the cigarette thing. It's the cigarette thing.
I'm just going to wrap this up. Carry on talking.
I'm wrapping it up.
Even more.
I'm wrapping it up. It's the cigarette thing. That's the one thing that's playing on my mind the most. The half-smoked cigarette.
What about it? You think it was placed there?
I wrapped it up, damn it.
But I didn't understand.
I don't think it's placed there. I think the fact that he had a half-smoked cigarette, he had one in his ear ready to smoke, halfway through smoking it, he's died. And that's why it's fallen in between his collar and his neck.
Right.
Yeah. And you think that's suspicious or not suspicious?
Yes. I believe that it's suspicious and not suspicious for the reason they're given
at the
before.
same time.
So it could just be coincidence. It could be that it was a natural death for illness or other reasons, like not malicious or anything. It's just he's just passed away, and that's why he's dropped a cigarette. It could be an assisted suicide or a murder or anything. It could be a lot of things. It just makes more sense to me. It makes more sense to me. Stop fucking laughing. It makes more sense to me.
Walking it backwards when you get to the end of your point.
I've still got so much to talk about. I can't drop it. The more I think about all of this, the more that it just rattles me head. And it's a really good theory. But right, the cigarette thing, I can't decide. There you go. I cannot decide on the theory because the cigarette thing is for some reason playing on my head so much.
I love how you've just talked for like a 5-minute monologue and have come to the conclusion that you have no conclusion.
Oh.
Do you think that he knew Jessica and that Robin was his son?
Yes.
Yes, to
In
both?
terms of Robin being his son, less sure, but I do believe that he knows Jessica, because if that interview was 100% true with the bust of TSM, then her reaction, how could she not know him?
Okay.
Because if someone showed you a bust of a random guy and said, "This guy's dead, do you recognize him?" you wouldn't get all shifty and look at the ground and not be able to look at it. You might feel a bit uncomfortable and be like, "Oh my god, yeah, sorry that he's died, but no, I don't recognize him."
Yeah, but the argument I have for that is that maybe you've never dealt with police before, and this is the first time you're being interviewed about something, and it's a murder investigation.
Okay, I agree, but the way that you described it initially, at least, is that she was talking, she was conducting the interview, and then she saw the bust, and then she reacted to what it looked like.
Yeah, but again, I've got this information from sites which are trying to
steer you one way.
steer you towards a theory,
Uh-huh.
and most of the case that's spy theory or murder, just because it's more exciting, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So it's not 100% that that's the way she reacted in the interview.
Okay. Presuming that she did react like that upon seeing the bust, yes, she knew him.
Yeah.
And then the genetics with the kid thing with the what was it?
Hypodontia. Which I'm
Hypodontia.
probably butchering. It's probably like hypodontia or,
okay. Hypodontia, yeah.
or poisson.
Or aluminum.
Aluminum. No, because I'm going to cut that out so they won't know.
No, it's in.
We
I'll
have
say
it
it enough. I'll say it enough.
Revenge.
Aluminum.
Damn it.
Coffee copy. I think because it was the ear thing as well, wasn't it?
Mhm.
With not in terms of the genetics of the kid and everything. So yeah, I don't think that ID looked like him. I think that's a stretch.
Yeah. But remember that the 2010 investigation, the guy doing it seemed to have the theory straight away, and he wanted to find everything that stuck to that theory. He seems very biased, in my opinion, especially since
Yeah.
he married the guy's great granddaughter. No,
Granddaughter.
granddaughter.
Supposed.
And then, no, he did.
No,
marry
as in the supposed great.
The supposed granddaughter,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then like merged his DNA. Well, that sounds creepy. He merged his DNA with the line. He's now the heir to the TSM fortune, but he's not, because that would be his kids. I don't know where I'm going with this. Stuart, do you want to contradict yourself a lot?
Keep it concise, please. Keep it concise.
So I think. So what was the question that you first asked Sean? Which was, what did I think he was a spy? Was the question, wasn't it?
The question was, how do you think he died? Which theory seems viable to you?
So I think he was murdered.
Okay.
I don't think he was a spy. I think he was murdered by Prosper and Jessica.
Okay.
The reason I think that is because I reckon it's something to do with the child that's been born and it not being theirs, and he turns up in the area that they live, and I think there's a bad reaction by the now couple about the fact that he's turned back up when he's had nothing to do with that child's life for a year and a half. So I think something bad has happened there. I think he's may have been poisoned, or perhaps Jessica knew about his health problems when they were in a relationship, and they've done something that might be a little bit of a stretch, but they've done something opportunistic to play on the fact that he might not be as well a man as he looks physically. And I think they've managed to get it so that he's been put on the beach dying, and for comfort reasons have given him a cigarette. That's what I think. So I don't think he's a spy. I think the Tamam Shud thing maybe throws that out slightly, but it could be that Jessica had fond memories of that piece of poetry from her previous relationship and thought this is finality over her baby's dad. And
Right.
that'd be her drawing a line under it, or even Prosper saying this is the end of it and stuffing that in there,
Yeah, it
and
could
saying
be Prosper, yeah.
yeah, this is the end of your relationship with this man. Cut it. It's completely dead because he's completely dead.
It's annoying because you already answered my question, which was, well, how do you explain the half-smoking cigarette? And then you're just like, it's for comfort.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
yeah. No,
And then I think
don't
I
apologize.
wonder if the code is something to do with how he managed to find out where they were. I wonder if it's maybe Prosper putting out his work into the public domain, trying to get people, putting his number out. I wonder if it's maybe a list of either the first initial of places that he's put these leaflets out, or people that have used his service, and it may be a case of it's just a database of people, and it's like on one day he's got that many people, then day 2 he's got that many people, and he's used them to try and work out where this guy actually lives so that he can find his baby.
Oh,
So that's what I think. It throws it out there slightly, and there's obviously a lot of conjecture, and I'm basing it on probably very little. But it's a bit different to everything that we've seen, and I just wonder if that's a different spin on it enough to maybe wobble the accepted theory or the theory that you guys have proposed. But I definitely don't. I don't think he was a spy. I don't think he's too dissimilar from the local population to be a spy for me. For me, it doesn't quite tie in well enough. He stands out too much. He's not wearing a hat. He's wearing American clothing. He's got American comb. He's got British cigarettes. This isn't a guy that stands out as an Aussie.
With the hat, what if the wind took it? I'm not joking
well,
about that.
I presume they would have found it, though. Or whether or not it was at the scene of the
Might
original
have been blown
crime.
out to sea.
What if it's blown to sea?
There's
Presumably,
probably a giant
the
squid
tide
wearing a
would have
hat
brought
somewhere.
it back. Oh, fuck's sake.
Oh my god, the idea of a giant squid just tipping his doffing his hat to you.
Doffing his bowler hat, yeah.
Milady.
Good day, good sir.
But yeah, that's my theory. That's my theory. But I think the hat might be at the original scene of the crime and they've disposed of it. So you've never been able to find it rather than it not existing.
Oh, he kept it as like a...
Maybe he was wearing it the whole time.
Oh, he wears it to this day.
That to me doesn't like. Well, hopefully not this day, but well,
he's dead.
To his grave.
I think he's probably dead by now.
Yeah, they died quite a while ago. So do you think it's premeditated then?
I do.
Because obviously they must have had to have the poison.
So I don't think. Oh, good point. So maybe it's not premeditated, but there's been an initial kerfuffle, and then they've gone, let's do something about him, and they've had a fleeting exchange where they've gone, holy shit, this guy's back in my life, and then they've dealt with the situation afterwards. So I think it's probably 2 distinct meetings, or even a series of continuous meetings where Prosper's getting more and more jealous because of the fact that TSM is back in Jessica's life.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Yeah,
I quite like that theory, actually.
Do you want to publish it? Should we make another? Should we make another
website?
Another blog?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that actually. All right, I'm gonna.
You don't get to change your mind now. I said my theory.
You don't have to steal the theory.
Okay, I still think my theory, but I like yours.
Cool. I think that's a good way to wrap this up. Yeah.
That's
a good way to finally conclude Sean's theory 15 minutes later.
Eventually we got to it.
I'm trying, guys, I'm trying.
Ramblings of a Madman is currently available on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify and YouTube. All the links are available on Twitter at Roam Podcast, that's ROAM Podcast. Thank you for listening and we'll see you next time.
Bye!